Welcome to another episode and new series of Track It. In this episode we're going to be taking the engine out of the trusty 172 Cup. It's currently got cat cam 438s in it, but by the end of this series it will have a new rebuilt engine and a turbocharger. This is how the engine currently is, and it's the one thing that's really let this car down while I've owned it. This is 160,000 miles it's from a 182, and it's got cat cam 438s in it. It does make quite good power. It's 196.3 according to the dyno, but it's getting a little bit tired and I just want to make this a nicer place. So I've sourced a lovely low mileage set of engine parts, and we're going to be building the engine in an upcoming episode, but at the moment we just need to take this apart and get rid of things like the really high quality filter and a few other bits that just really let the whole thing down. So let's start stripping this and get the engine out.
You're getting to put your foot on the brake.
Oh God.
Oh, holy smokes. Okay, that's a good one.
We've taken a few bits off the car now, so we've got the subframe off, the dog bone mount, the gear linkage, and we've pushed out the suspension, so you have to drain the gearbox to get the drive shaft out. Then we've got the rad pack out, and there's only a few bits left to take off before we can get the engine out of the car. So we're going to take this off and take the ECU bracket off, taking the coolant pipes off the heater matrix. The main one though is the exhaust manifold, which is on the back, a little bit difficult to get to, but the electric ratchet will make that job a lot easier. Once that's off, we just need to make sure everything is disconnected, so the fuel lines, and then in here there are a number of wiring connectors. There's a big white plug, and then these fused connections all come out, and the engine loom just pulls out of there, so you can actually take the engine out with the loom on. So I'm going to crack on getting the last few bits off, and then we can get the engine out. Now we've got the engine out, there are just a few things that we need to do before we can take the cat cams out of this. That is getting the wiring off, which seems to be doing itself. Then we will take the gearbox off, and you have to take the starter motor off to do that, as that's part of the bell housing bolts. Then we'll be able to get this thing on the stand and see what it's like inside. Now I've taken the engine out of the cup, it's time to start taking it apart. The only bit I actually want out of this though is the cams. They are Cat Cam 438 and that's what allowed this engine to make its 195 odd horsepower. The rest of it though is done 160,000 miles, so I'm not expecting it to be brilliant inside. So I just need to get the cams out of it. If the head looks good, I might save it, but I don't really intend to take apart the bottom half. I'll get the cup alternator brackets off and save those, but once we've got those out, we can send that off to the scrap heap and get the nice low mileage parts in the garage. Now I've finished cutting off the dephaser seal, I'm actually in the engine, and given that it's done 160k, it is in really good condition. There's a couple of little bits that you'd expect on something of this age, like this journal here has got a bit of a ridge on it, but other than that, it's really not all that bad. Strangely, the breather cover didn't have a gasket on it, but this was sealed quite well, didn't have too much sealant on it, so I think it was K-Tech that installed the cams. Did a pretty good job of it. The cams are still in really good condition, so I'll sell those off and that'll enable me to get a map and a few other bits. But it does look very good, so I've taken out the lifters and the rockers as well, just in case I need those. But other than that, sadly, this very trusty, well-maintained engine is now going to meet its fate at the recycling yard. Now that engine's out of the way, let's have a look at two other engines. Originally, in the background of this video, I would have had a black gold 182, but as you can see, it's a 172 Cup. And I bought the 182 because I was going to transfer everything from this car into that one, because this has got a little bit of rust on the sills, which is pretty common on a Clio. However, upon closer inspection, the Black Gold 182 had exactly the same disease, but even worse because one of the quarters had been replaced, so there were actual holes in it under quite a lot of filler. So that car's gone off to car heaven, but I did manage to salvage a few bits from it beforehand, one of those being the engine. I did buy the car very cheap though, and that was because the engine was bust on it. But it sounded like bottom end damage. So when I took it apart, I was hopeful that I was going to find a good condition cylinder head, which is a rare item these days. Anyway, I didn't find a good condition cylinder head, but I did find some pretty interesting other damage. So let's have a look at engine number 2 of this video. Go. Have I already drained it? I think I've already drained it. This dephaser is 0118 on the date, so this is pretty much brand new, proving that they definitely did do a full job when they changed the cam belt on this. So hopefully we can reuse this if it hasn't got metal in. Timing's good. This engine was looking pretty good until we did this. This is the piston and the cylinder head. They look like they've been shot blasted with something. I don't know what. And all we can think of is that maybe the tip of the spark plug has snapped off, got into the cylinder and not escaped through the exhaust. Everything looks shot blasted, the surfaces are completely knackered, the block has got massive scores in it, and this sadly is not repairable. So time to find another head. Your guess is as good as my one on that one then, because it is very odd damage, isolated to one cylinder, the timing wasn't out, and originally I thought that the tip of the spark plug had come off and kind of bounced around and damaged it, but upon a little bit more research it looks like it may be pinking, so I can only assume some kind of injector. But if you know what that is, then let me know, because I'm still interested to this day what could have caused that damage. Moving on to engine number 3 then. This is one that I had been stockpiling for the last couple of years, and sadly it's only a bottom end, so I still had to find a cylinder head. But all I needed to do with this one was take it apart, make sure that it was in good condition, and then measure the cranks that I had to check which one I was going to use. So let's have a look at engine number 3 of this video.
Come out. Ugh. That's what I want.
I'm at the point now where we can measure the crank to see whether it's in tolerance, and to do that I've got 2 micrometers. These are external micrometers, they're the Moore and Wright variety, and this is a 25 to 50 and a 50 to 75. All micrometers come with a small calibration piece like this, so before you do any measuring make sure you put the calibration piece in and adjust it with the small C-spanner, similar to a coilover spanner, to make sure it's dead on reading. I'm going to measure the main bearings and the bearings where the conrods are, and just do 2 measurements. One at kind of like 12 o'clock, 12 to 6, and then the other one 9 to 3 to make sure that I haven't got any overling. So let's get the micrometers on and see if we're in tolerance. Now I've done the measuring for both of the cranks. This is the one which is very low mileage, and as you can see the measurements are pretty consistent, very nice, no overling or anything like that. This is the higher mileage one. It's done over 100,000 miles, this crank, and you can see that the measurements are quite a bit more all over the place, or they're a bit more volatile anyway. And there's wear on this one. This is the one which had got hot and had got the dodgy piston in it, so who knows what's happened there. And there's a penis there. Who did that? Anyway, this is the crank that we'll be keeping. That's it for this episode then. Of the 2 engines we've taken apart, we managed to have got one good bottom end, but other than that we've just got a lot of spare nuts and bolts that maybe we can use in the future. The main thing is I need to get hunting for a cylinder head, but in the next episode, all of this will have come back from the machine shop, so it will be in pristine condition, very nice and clean to go together with a few trick bits that I've been collecting over the last couple of months. Make sure you follow us on Instagram because our stories are much more up to date than these videos. That's it for now though. I will see you in another episode very soon. We've got two engines which we're going to be putting in the track car. No, we're not. We're going to put one in.